But before we begin with our first important discussion, and the theme would be building the digital workforce for a high growth future, let me acknowledge the presence of the Honorable Diallo Rabane, Minister for the Cabinet Office and Digital Innovation from Bermuda, the Honorable Raymond Lanvell, Minister of Transport, Communications and Tourism from the Republic of Suriname, and he will be joining us very soon for the first discussion. The Excellencies, Ambassadors of Cuba, Panama, the Dominican Republic, Republic of South Korea, and the Diplomatic Corps, good morning. Dr. Del Rio Newman, Chairman of CANTO, Mrs. Teresa Wonkin, Secretary General of CANTO, Ms. Inga Smids, Chief Executive Officer, Liberty Caribbean, CANTO members, specially invited guests, delegates, members of the media, good morning again. It is important for us to embrace this first discussion, a very important one, and to take us through all the intimate details. I want to welcome again to the stage and lectern Mark Reynolds, Director of CANTO, for this, our first fireside chat. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, JW. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I hope everybody has had a good sleep after Liberty's party last night. Everybody was doing the Congo line. I think I see some people that were here in it. All right. So it is my pleasure to be able to have our first fireside chat. As an organization, what we like to do is to showcase the story of countries for interest, for engagement, for development, just putting a spotlight on countries that are developing within the region. And what I'd like to do is to walk you through a bit of this story here regarding Suriname. Suriname has been a long-standing partner in terms of interaction through Telesur and through the government of Suriname in supporting CANTO. And it's our mandate to ensure that it stands as a pillar, like all of our member states, in being present in the discussions. And at this point in time, Suriname is entering a defining chapter in its development journey, with offshore oil production expected to begin in 2027. The country faces a once-in-a-generation opportunity, not only to grow economically, but to do so wisely and sustainably. History shows us that natural resources alone do not guarantee long-term prosperity. What truly determines success is how well a country prepares its people, its workforce to capture value, manage complexity, and innovate for the future. This morning's fireside chat focuses on that preparation, how Suriname can build a digitally skilled workforce capable of supporting a modern energy sector, strengthening public institutions, and driving economic diversification beyond oil. Now, when I introduce this minister, you'll understand his background, and I think he's a man that will rise to the challenge and is so appointed at this time. Minister, the Honorable Raymond Lanvell. He was sworn in on the 16th of July, 2025 of this year, July 16th, 2025, as Minister of Transport, Communication and Tourism in the government of Suriname. Until January of that year, he worked at UNCTAD, New York, as an Economic Affairs Officer since October 2017. Through that, from 2016 to 2017, he was employed by the Financing for Development Office of the Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Mr. Lanvell was a Surinamese diplomat posted in the Permanent Mission of Suriname to the United Nations in New York from 2007 to 2016. His significant responsibilities during that time was Vice Chair of the High-Level Committee on South-South Cooperation, Vice Chair in the Bureau of UN General Assembly of the 66th Second Committee Session, member of the UNFCCC Standing Committee on Climate Finance, and the coordinator and lead negotiator of the Group of 77 and China on financing for development, especially for Addis Ababa Actions Agenda, the outcome of the third International Conference on Financing for Development. In Suriname, before his posting in New York, Minister Ranvel served with the UNDP as a national coordinator for the Global Environment Facility Small Grants Program. He was also employed, among others, by the Conservation International Suriname and the National Forum of NGOs for Sustainable Development and Poverty Eradication. What a background. And it is my pleasure to welcome Minister Raymond Lanvel, who will share with his perspective on how digital skills, talent development, and leadership can shape Suriname's high-growth future. Minister Lanvel, please join me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good, Minister. Thank you. Thank you for joining. I know that it's your first time at CANTO. I hope it won't be your last. I hope we will see you in the Dominican Republic. And I'm just saying, I mean, the experience that you bring at this point in time, I mean, it's in telecommunications, but I think what has been coming as a theme from yesterday is also to focus on the people and technology and pivoting to be able to ensure that the region is able to maximize its benefits from innovation. Now, as I'd mentioned, Suriname is at a point of oil production. I've spent, and I'm an honorary Guyanese. I hope that my Guyanese in the room will claim me. Thank you, Ved, thank you, Abu. And in a point for technology readiness, as Suriname prepares for oil production in 2027, how ready is the country today from a digital technological standpoint to manage a modern data-driven energy sector?
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds, and let me use this opportunity to thank CANTO for the invitation to be here.
Thank you.
You just mentioned it's my first time, and so I'm also here to learn. I want to also recognize that we have the director of the telecom company, Telesur, of Suriname, in the audience. I want to also thank him for facilitating my delegation's participation in this meeting. So yes, in a way, I'm a newcomer to this area of work, but not that new, because you mentioned when you were talking about my biography that I worked at UNCTAD in New York. And UNCTAD, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, is the secretariat for the Commission on Science and Technology for Development, and it's the focal point for ICT within the UN system. So I had the benefit of facilitating from the New York office, which is a kind of diplomatic mission for the UNCTAD, whose headquarters is in Geneva. But in New York, that's the political center of the United Nations. So my job was to liaise back and forth between New York and Geneva, and so that the decisions that were taken in the headquarters on ICT, that they were fed in with the technical background of the work that was being done in Geneva, but vice versa for Geneva when they're taking decisions, to be aware of the technical, the political issues at play. Now, to come to Suriname in terms of preparedness for the oil and gas, you may know Trinidad and Tobago has also a history with oil production. And in 2015, we came to an end in Suriname, the existence of the Aluminum Company of America, who has been there for 100 years. But because, it was no longer interesting to be producing bauxite, they just closed up shop and go. They pat us on the back that I think 45%, please mind me the exact number, forgive me if I don't use the exact number, of Surinamese bauxite that contributed to producing the planes that won the Second World War. Notwithstanding that, they closed up shop and they left. So in Surinamese mind right now, we welcome this development and this prosperity that the oil will bring, but our mind is in diversifying the revenues that will come from bauxite. But in the meantime, yes, we have to be ready. I must say at this point in time with the telecommunication company, we're more or less ready in terms of infrastructure. We have fiber capacity in the coastal area from east to west. Suriname is very big if you compare to the islands. We're in the Caribbean, I think, for a couple of reasons, because we are in the sea, the Caribbean Sea. But basically, the people that they gave the name to the region, they still are in Suriname, where you don't find them in the islands anymore. So we deserve to be called Caribbean, because the Caribbean people, the native Indians, they are still to be found in Suriname, in vibrant communities. And that's a challenge, because they live in remote areas. They had to go to these areas because of colonization and so on. And then we had the Maroon people, where I stem from, who revolted and established societies in the hinterlands, who are also living in the remote areas. And so there is a challenge on how to include them and how to get telecommunication and the internet also there. The situation is now that we are upgrading the system from 3G in some of these areas to LTE and so on. So we're getting ready. Maybe good for you to know is that last week we were in French Guiana, where we also will take extra capacity from a subsea link that runs from Europe straight to Cayenne. I think it also has to do with sovereignty issues for the French, that they want their department overseas connected directly with them and not only through the Americas line. So those kind of infrastructure investment are being made in Suriname, so that we are ready to go. But we recognize the Dutch disease. So we know, we've seen it with the bauxite. It's like the economy collapsed when the aluminum company of America decided to leave. So we should not go through that same development again. So what do you do to use the revenues that we will be garnering from the oil to invest in other sectors with potential in the economy, like ecotourism? Suriname is very diverse. I say it's the United Nations in microcosm. We have our population is built up from descendants from people from all corners of the world. And you were talking about Guyana. Because of the Dutch connection, for instance, we have people from Java, Indonesians, that you don't have in the island. If you see some in the island, no, they came from Suriname.
Minister, I mean, I am, and I'll draw from my experience from Ghana as well, because what I'm hearing from you is that you're preparing to serve the communities in terms of the cables, those that are in the interior, for instance, in terms of providing connectivity to those persons that may be considered to be not served in Paramaribo, for instance,
Yes, the concentration of our development is in the coastal area. In Paramaribo, and so on. But those communities are also part of our society.
That's true.
And so if they are being left behind, then that's not the right way of development that we would want for the country. So while we're preparing to serve the oil and gas industry, we also have to make sure that our population is being developed at the right pace and at the right level in an inclusive way, so that they can also keep up with these developments. So yes, it's a challenge, because how do you do it? Lately we are having discussions about introduction of satellite through Starlink and those kind of systems, so that those communities they can be connected in a proper way.
That's
That
a-
is a challenge, though,
That's
because
it
at
can
this
be.
point on time, our law, the Electronic Communication Act of Suriname, doesn't allow for
Well,
those kind of
Minister,
new.
that is another point where I just want to jump in right here because you beat me to it because my next question.
Yeah.
Because whereas you can have the investment in the infrastructure
Yeah.
in terms of dealing with tech and upskilling for digital workforce,
Yeah.
it's all about dealing with what is under the hood of the car.
Yeah.
And you have to, I mean, in terms of getting into the nitty gritty, you know. And I'm keen, you had mentioned making adjustments to the electronic communication. And what we have seen, for instance, in countries such as Cayman, we have seen it in Guyana, we have seen it in the Bahamas. There has been a quick pivoting, nimble pivoting, I'd say, in terms of innovation for satellite services and other infrastructure. I would just want, I mean, we're all about partnerships in CANTO. You know, there's pretty much anybody here in the ecosystem that you can find to probably to work with, to partner with as a government. And I would just like to get to the particular investment priorities for digital services, particularly in relation to digital infrastructure, skills development of Surinamese, regulatory technology, and just creating an innovative ecosystem. You spoke about ecotourism. That is big for both Guyana and for Suriname. Can you walk me through what would be our long-term, short-term priorities?
Yeah, so on the short term, like I said, we have this draft, we're drafting, we're redrafting the Electronic Communication Act in Suriname to cater for this, for the new technologies as well, especially satellite, because with subsea cable and other kinds of ICT infrastructure, there are some requirements that and everybody here know that's not required for satellite, which our act at this point does not allow for.
Right.
So we're working on that. But there are also other things that we want to do. Like I'm talking about tourism because that's also in my portfolio as minister, but transportation is also in my portfolio. Right now, there is a development in Suriname where especially young people and young couples, they are moving in more urban areas, to residential areas. So we need to have a way, and maybe AI and digitalization can help us there, to find, first of all, to incentivize the young people to go live in those areas. But where is the concentration of the new demographics? There are 2 districts out of Paramaribo where the people are moving into. So how do you organize for public transportation to come up with new lines so that you can include those people? They don't have to use their car to drive to work back and forth, those kind of things. But also in my ministry, we pay a heavy subsidy to the public transportation. How can we make use of digitalization to help us understand exactly what are we paying for and to target those sections of the population that we want to support, like students, like the elderly people, and so on. So we're looking for digitalization in that. You just mentioned that I went back in January last year from New York to live in Paramaribo. When I go to the lab in New York, then there is somewhere on the website, all my the assessment is there. My doctor just makes a click. If I need to go somewhere else, I just give them a code and they can see it. In Suriname, I have to get a paper from the lab, and then I have to take it by myself to my doctor. And if I have to go to somewhere else, do something, I have to walk with these papers and all these things. So I was very frustrated.
I can imagine.
So we're having this discussion now that we need to digitalize a lot of the services from the government as a start, so that that would serve the community better. But all that you need to have regulatory
systems
to
in place.
enable it and to make it possible.
It's funny that you mentioned about actually having to go to the doctor. You have a paper,
Yeah.
and we have one of our vendors here, Patient Connect, who I think the night of the opening ceremony, I went to do a facial scan. I was able to detect that I had 1 out of 10 10% sleep.
Yeah.
So I had to run upstairs. The doctor on point said, go upstairs and go and sleep and get ready for tomorrow.
Exactly.
You know, so those are the type of technologies that
Right,
actually
right,
are
right.
developing within the Caribbean, where we don't really have to look for, we don't have to look further than our neighbor to get the skills.
Right.
And I think that is what this discussion opens, that it's an opportunity.
Right.
You know, like I
Right.
find, and I mean, I went into Guyana, I moved to Guyana in the 2016. And when I went there, just the partnerships that had come in to sort of prepare the people, like, I mean, it has transformed.
Right.
Really, I mean, I'm sure that my colleagues from Guyana here can speak to that.
Right.
It has transformed, but the people have transformed because it's about investing, being ready.
Exactly.
You understand? Creating an environment.
Right.
And
because of those challenges, that's
right.
also open up where the investment priorities need to
will
be.
come to be, which is the people.
Exactly.
Which is the people, education.
Yes.
And I think it sort of, this discussion gives a cue into how we, all of our vendors here, all of our partners, whether it be telcos, can come alongside you in terms of ensuring that we protect the intellectual property, the wealth within the region.
Yeah.
I'm a forever Caribbean national, and I know that we're coming up on time, but I just wanted to craft our last question in the form of a parting shot based on your experience. You have been in New York, you have seen it all, Minister. You have seen different nations go through this transformation. And in terms of readiness, my final question to you is, looking at the people, looking at Paramaribo, the different districts, what is the pitch that you would want to make for partnership from CANTO, from our members and our vendors that are here?
Thank you. I've seen you talked about me being lead negotiator for the group of 77 in China.
Yes, yes.
As a small country from the Caribbean. That comes because the CARICOM group was very strong and united in New York. But what I'm seeing, and this is a discussion that we need to have, what's happening with the CARICOM single market? You know, let's not go to the economy yet, but the single market. Because one thing I learned from UNCTAD is that the countries that are rich now, their neighbors are their biggest trading partners. So that's a lesson that I think we should take from what's happening in the international trading system, that we should be doing business and trading more with each other and therefore coming up with systems that would cater to the community. So this collaboration and cooperation is something that we support and that Suriname really wants to be part of, because I think it will serve us all in the end very well.
Thank you so much, Minister. And that sort of sets the context for what CANTO is about. I mean, what we have here is an opportunity for us. We have seen it with Guyana, where partnership has come in to build and develop upskilled persons. Suriname is there. I would hasten to say, and not to offend anyone, Trinidad has the best food, and Suriname is right there tying with it, just based on the diversity.
He's wrong. I think he's very wrong for saying that. Let me tell you something. I was just talking about Surinamese coming from all corners of the world.
Yes.
So we created a kind of fusion that you will not be able to create here.
I know, Minister.
So
Minister,
we're using spices and everything from all corners of the world.
Minister, cut me some slack. I am in Trinidad, so I have to give.
I'm happy for you taking second place, but.
But that's what it's all about. You come to the Caribbean and you get a taste of the culture. And I think once we're able to appreciate our differences, we recognize that we are just as similar and there are opportunities for investment. Minister, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, of course, getting the ball rolling there, Mark, and the Minister of Transport, Communications and Tourism from Suriname. Yes. Let's continue. Of course, we move on with another important speaking point here, the theme for the next discussion. We're dealing with reliability isn't enough. Performance is what builds confidence. And we welcome from Ask Tech Works, a principal and founder, Abby S. Knowles, will take us through it for a very important discussion stateside.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you, CANTO, for having me. And to all the ministers and dignitaries, special guests, and the members of CANTO, my name is Abby Knowles. I am originally from Jamaica. I am based in the U.S. right now and working in the Caribbean and the U.S. But it is such a pleasure to be back in Trinidad. I started my formal education here at UA in St. Augustine. I did 1 year, and I went to the US. And then I went to work at Verizon, and I've been heads down for 28 years at Verizon, working to help them build and become one of the world's biggest and best communications companies. And I'm so honored and excited to be part of the CANTO family to share what I've learned over those 27 years. I started in the fixed side of the business. I moved to the mobile side of the business. I believe this is the clicker that I will need. And I wrapped up in the IT side on the consumer business. I was the technology lead supporting the commercial side that is a $100 billion business. And they told me when I went there, they said, if this consumer business catches a cold, the whole company is going to catch a cold. So I was managing billing platforms, agile transformations, IT, and I was so blessed with this opportunity to have this end-to-end vision of what it takes to run a telecom from wireline, mobile, and the enterprise IT that stitches it all together. And that is really what is informing this conversation. And I'm so excited about the CANTO vision and the mission about elevating from access. I missed Inga's introduction yesterday, but it's a perfect time as technology is evolving. We're at this inflection point where AI is changing the game. Quantum computing is going to be right on the heels of that. It's disrupting, and the Caribbean is perfectly positioned geographically. It's a perfect time. So access, connectivity is not enough, and I'll tell you why. Because even when your network is up, your customers can still be having experience issues. We've all been there, right? You can have micro outages, you can have back-end systems degraded because you have DDoS or denial of service attacks that are degrading your core network and leading to poor customer experience. And when you think about it, that is what is going to attract investment, right, that the Caribbean wants. It's how do you not only keep your network connected, but you keep it sustained. And I had the opportunity, when I joined Verizon, it was Bell Atlantic at the time, I was on the wireline side of the business, and then I moved to the wireless, the mobile side, and I experienced something very interesting. They would tell you that they created this secret sauce that they used to move from number 3 to number 1 in the industry. And it was, yes, they had spectrum, but there were 2 other things that they did. They focused on a culture of ownership, and this theme here in CANTO about people is so important. It was one of the foundations that I saw when I moved to the mobile side. But it was also where Verizon decided that they were going to lean into network superiority. And this is what I believe is the mission. As part of elevating the Caribbean region from access and connectivity is actually something that I would call network confidence. Confidence that the customers trust, confidence that the regulators have that give credibility. And also, eventually, you want to attract investors. You want that economic investment. And network confidence is what I believe is the next level of this evolution. And listen, global competitiveness demands this kind of unwavering confidence. And you say, well, Abby, what does that look like? Well, here's my vision of what a network confidence framework would look like: reliability. I don't think anybody can write a playbook on reliability and resilience more than the Caribbean region. When I think about the hurricanes and natural disasters that this region has to deal with every year, and when I look at how Hurricane Melissa and all the recovery that has happened, and I compared it to some of the recovery that happened in some of the Cat 4 hurricanes, Melissa was a 5, but in the US, the speed at which the recovery is happening, the innovation that is taking place in the Caribbean is unmatched. So I have no qualms or concerns about reliability and resilience. See, reliability is the network is operational and it is secure, right? But resilience is rapid recovery. It's about how fast can you recover. Same thing. It's a strength here in the Caribbean. It's also about containment. It's about if you have a breach, can you contain that breach really quickly? But the peak of what I would call network confidence, to really compete in the digital landscape and to compete on the global scale as part of the digital fabric, is what I would call performance, network performance. It's consistent and trusted excellence under load. And I'm going to go a little deeper in here. And for all of you who are like, well, I'm a commercial, I'm business, I'm regulatory, man, this is going too much, this is too technical. No, there's something in here for you. So stay with me, please, okay? But do you notice that security? I've called that out because security belongs to all of us. I don't care what part of the business, what part of the industry you are in, it starts with all of us. And so every layer of this network confidence framework must have an element of security. So here's what, to me, network performance looks like, and this is what I saw Verizon build. And I'll tell you this, if you know about the US telecom market, T-Mobile took this page out of Verizon's playbook, and they used it against Verizon to compete. 5, 6, 7 years ago, T-Mobile was number 4. And they will try to come here and tell you they're number 1, right? I still have a little Verizon blood in me, so I'll have to say Verizon is still number 1, but they are definitely competitive. They've made a lot of noise. And yes, there have been other things, you know, spectrum is important, the amount of spectrum that you have. We'll talk about that, because even in places where we didn't have a lot of spectrum, you are able to win. And it has a lot to do with network performance. It really is a mark of operational maturity. And I would even suggest to you that most companies have an element of network performance. But what I'm calling on this organization and all the members here is to be purposeful and to be deliberate in making network performance a part of your goal to get to that digital and operational maturity. And predictability at peak. So when you're at peak, right, you're not having micro outages. Because that can happen. You can look at the KPIs and you could look like you're 99% up. But that other point, what's that? 99, that other 1%, right? Who are those customers? What is their experience like? Consistency over time. That means week over week over week, your network is dependable. And your network is really your product. This is what you're selling, right? Is it dependable week over week? This is what companies who are looking to invest, they want to know, can I bring my company here? Can I have my meetings here? Can we do our events here? This is what they're looking for, the consistency over time. And then dependable under stress. You know, this weekend my daughter was on a birthday cruise with some friends, and because of the cold front and weather, they had to divert the cruise ship to another island, and she said there were so many cruise ships, I guess there were a lot of diversions. Could that island handle this load under stress, right? This is what network performance looks like. The network is up versus the economy can trust it. So in the next 5 minutes, what I want to talk about is what does it look like, right, to create something like this? If you have a seed already planted, or if this is something that you're like, I want to lean into this network superiority and use this network confidence framework, I'm giving you a playbook of how you can create this within your existing organization. The foundation is building the truth layer. You cannot get the kind of reliable superiority without the inventory and the topology. Data is the truth. And not partial data, but data all the way to the end. This means the handset, it means the CPE, it means the customer address. And it doesn't just reside in the network operations center. It needs to be in systems that everybody can have access to and have visibility. That's the foundational part where you're data-centric. At the other end of the spectrum is you have the accelerant. This is the sexy part, right? This is artificial intelligence, machine learning. This is where you have all the technology that is going to enable you to use the data, to do things and to see things that you wouldn't have been able to take action on before. But before you can get the right to use all that fancy technology, businesses, regulators, this is where you come in, right? We have to define what are those service standards. What does that look like for the customer to have that sustained performance at peak? And then once you define those service standards, what are the metrics, right? Whether it's jitter and latency, and it might look different for different services. Broadband, right? In-home internet, mobile services will have different quality of service, will have different quality of experience. And this is where the commercial side and the technology teams actually have to work together to do this. A lot of companies stop here because it looks good. You can create KPIs, and you have dashboards, and you have the red, yellow, green, and you look like you're doing stuff. But the real sauce, the real things that keep this together is what I call performance governance. And this is where the weekly reviews, this is where you have tracking and the culture. This is where you stitch this performance mindset, not just in the tech teams, but it's expected now by the commercial partners. And when you have meetings, you're not just talking about outage recovery. You're actually talking about how your network has sustained. And you are expected as a technology team to talk about it. And as a commercial partner, you're expected to ask about it. You're expected to expect this level of excellence. And you know, when you say, well, Abby, that sounds like you're adding stuff to my plate. How are we going to pay for that? Here's the thing. Network performance comes with built-in goodness. It's an efficiency play. Because a lot of times, if you think about it, if you're a network, I'm going to geek out a little here, so for everybody else, you can do it with me, right? Your network has a lot of retries and retransmissions. That's ghost traffic. That is taking up capacity that you could be putting more customers, you could be putting higher paying customers, technology capabilities like network slicing, where you can have different tiers. That ghost traffic is taking up that space. So when you start a practice of network performance, you can actually create efficiency. And when you create efficiency in your network, guess what? You use energy better. And energy is one of the most expensive components of running a telecom. Right? I saw energy costs escalating so quickly in the network. It also will be able to lower your OPEX. Where's a lot of our OPEX spent? Firefighting, outage recovery, tracing where the outage happened. If you really lean into a network performance practice, you can get into predictive and proactive. And you're probably doing some of that now, but I'll tell you, the network performance takes that to another level. So you get some goodness, you get some efficiency out of leaning into this network performance part of the network confidence framework. And you're like, well, still need money, right? Who's going to do it? And everybody at work is like, well, I'm busy because I have too much work on my plate. I want to encourage you. There's somebody in your organization somewhere, they're passionate about this. I remember I was on a field tour and I knew that energy was an issue and I needed to double down on that. And I ran into a gentleman and he just kept talking about energy. And I pulled him aside and I said, you know my energy czar. You have to give them a name, give them a title, make them feel good. And he helped us to build this energy practice at Verizon that went from half of the US, which I was responsible for, to all of mobile, to eventually used by the entire Verizon enterprise. You can do the same thing with performance. Start small. Leverage the technology. You don't have to hire a lot of people. Leverage the people. It's a form of upskilling. And then finally, reprioritize. You're going to have to relook at your allocation, your capital allocation, your OpEx allocation, and say, I'm going to make this important. So as I wrap, in this digital fabric, in order to move into this global competitive, not move, we're there, Caribbean is there. It's about making our presence felt loud and bold and bright and beautiful the way we are. It's about moving beyond uptime. It's about seeing that you will get a return on your investment once you lean into the performance piece. And this will put us and keep us loudly and boldly on the competing globally. And for the regulatory folks in the room, aligning incentives around quality of experience is what is going to continue to fuel this passion. Start small and grow it and see your network superiority increase the kind of confidence and investment that we want in the Caribbean. Thank you so much for having me.
Well done there, Abby, and of course, welcome back. Welcome back. Great to have you back. Indeed, we want to continue and we get into the GSMA Open Gateway Initiative. Of course, it speaks to driving the standardized adoption of network APIs globally, which is enabling new business models, new solutions to real-world business problems, and creating new enterprise revenue streams as the initiative gains global momentum and acceptance. Let's welcome the Chief Engineer, GSMA, Ian Pannell. He joins us on stage. Ian, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And my first task is to return somebody his phone. There you go. Right. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thanks for letting me come along here to talk to you today. It's a great privilege, and I hope I stand up to that privilege. I'd also like to say that I've heard a few people this morning already talk about skills and people, and that to us is a really important topic, particularly in terms of regions and how they differentiate. So we're behind all of that, and well done. This is my first trip to a CANTO meeting, but it's not my first trip to Trinidad. I was here 44 years ago as a baby midshipman in the Royal Navy, and the only thing I can recall looking different, because the taxi driver asked me that on my way to the hotel, was what looks different. And I said, the cars, there's far fewer big American cruisers, and the roads. The roads were busier and smoother. I'd also like to thank the CANTO team for all the help they've given us. It's not just me speaking here now. We've also had an event on Sunday, and we had wonderful support from the CANTO team. And I hope that our relationship with CANTO will continue from strength to strength, and it's certainly what we're trying to achieve. Clicker, right? Let's start. Before I start, I'm not going to be too techie, I hope, although I am a geek. But before I start on talking about the GSMA Open Gateway, what I would like to do is a little bit of a history lesson, really short. I started off my career in mobile in Vodafone. In the 90s, I had other jobs before that, but in the 90s I joined Vodafone and worked on network services and system architectures and such like. And one of the things that was prime then that we were talking about was working with other operators and the European Standards Institute, ETSI, on something called OSF Parlay, Open Software Foundation Parlay. And it was a set of API, they were working on a set of APIs to interface external bodies, external partners with mobile operators. And that was 28 whatever years ago, quite a long time. And nothing happened on it, it just died off. I think OSF Parlay got used in various places, but in the mobile space and the telecommunication space, it never really took off. We had various projects that followed that. We had in I'm trying to remember what WAC stood for. WAC created as a consortium across the industry, and then it was then given back to GSMA, and GSMA were told to make WAC work, and we failed. It didn't work. We then took something else and created one API and tried to make it work with one API. Again, it's failed. And this is sort of as time's ticking on and the need for other partners to interoperate with mobile operators, because when you're a big mobile operator, it's the number of partners that you need to work with is really high, so it's quite a challenging task for your wholesale or your sales organizations. And it's also challenging if I'm an external partner, particularly if I'm an international service provider, if I'm a DHL or something like that, and I want to work with all the operators worldwide, then I want to work with one or two, or I want to work with them all on a common basis, but nothing really existed. So the concept that we're trying to support with Open Gateway is this very simple idea that out at the edge, in the hands of users, or in certain devices, there's mobile equipment, and we want the people who use that mobile equipment to be able to interact with it remotely. We don't want or need to see that happen always with the intervention of a person. We also want to be able to provide the services that piece of equipment needs to be managed remotely as well as accessed remotely. So all of these cloud service type models, and you can have all sorts of acronyms that define that, all of those are attempting to do the same thing, and we're just trying to make that piece of glue that makes it all work together more transparent. And I'm going to apologize, really apologize to everyone who knows what this is all about, but what we're doing with what we did with the earlier attempts with OSF Parlay and WAC and One API, and what we're doing with Open Gateway is providing common APIs that can allow you to interface with network operators, and ideally interface with them in a common way so that you can be efficient with your use of resources. And there are many sorts of use cases you can have. There are some very simple ones, which conceptually you think, what's the value of that? You can have an interface that says, when was the last time the SIM card was changed in this device? Where is this device? Is this device currently in a phone conversation? Those sorts of pieces of information are actually very useful if you're a financial services organization that is trying to understand whether a transaction that is happening at any particular point in time is safe. If you know that the user is next to the cash point machine, then you can actually more confidently allow the cash point machine to give out money. If you know that the user is in a phone conversation at the same time as they're talking to you through some other way and trying to do a large transaction, then that phone call that's also happening at the same time may be a scammer trying to defraud the user. If you know that a phone has only recently just had its SIM card changed, then you could know that the account that this transaction is trying to transact against could actually be subject to an account takeover fraud. So there's all sorts of benefits that you can do in just that little area where APIs that give that sort of information back are really useful. And there are loads and loads more around capabilities of the network. So whether you can ask for an uplift in performance for a particular period of time or transaction, location, as I say, location of the user, information that the network holds on KYC aspects, all subject obviously to the jurisdictional restrictions that would need to apply to keep everything safe, but there's loads of things that can be done in that space. And what Open Gateway is there to do is to sort of make that all work and define a common way, not just for the partners to interface into the mobile network, but the mobile networks to interface to each other to allow it to really scale. And our model that we have for Open Gateway, we talk about north, south, east, west interfaces. In the north-south directions, we have interfaces to the external world, so the partners, the DHL tracked packages, the health equipment, the robots, the drones, whatever it is that you want to be looking at and affecting the performance or location of. South, you have interfaces down into the networks, and the south interfaces also we're assisted in that work that we're doing. It's not just GSMA. There's an organization called the Telemanagement Forum. They provide some of the operational aspects of those APIs that we're defining. Very importantly, there's an organization which is a Linux open source software project called Kamara, which is actually defining the actual APIs themselves and how they operate and defining new APIs. And there's the work that GSMA is doing in terms of, in particular, making sure that everyone's sort of following the same pattern and models and that it works, but also looking at east-west interfaces, which is out between operator to operator, so that I can interface into one operator, but the request could be going to another to fulfill, because actually the customer isn't the operator I interfaced with. The customer or the end user device is with an operator, another operator. We have put a lot of effort into this program. We put a lot of effort into previous ones, but somehow or other, this time it seems to be sticking and working. So so it's paying off, and we're looking at when we launched it, we talked about a 3 or so year program. This slide hasn't really changed much over that period, and it's really just to say that we're hoping that by the end of next year that we really have achieved our objectives, and it suddenly becomes a self-sustaining program across the whole industry, rather than something that GSMA is pushing. In terms of where we started, we had to follow the numbers and the scale, so we started with North America and Europe and Asia, and that's where we see the big take-up so far. But part of the reason I'm here is to talk about, well, that's not the only part of the world, and ideally we want to see this become totally ubiquitous. So this is the areas we're reaching out to now. And we also want to try and improve the reach into other sectors. The chart here, which I can't remember where it came from, McKinsey, I think it was, we commissioned to do some work on that area and talked about the opportunity in some of these other sectors. But importantly, one of the things we're doing is also running a team inside the GSMA that reaches out to these other sectors and says, what are you looking for? What sort of APIs do you need to conduct your business? And I've already had a conversation with someone here about that and putting them in touch with we're calling them the Fusion team, but in touch with that team to actually do that. So if you're not a mobile operator, but you are someone who wants to interact with mobile operators, give us a shout out and we can make sure that we have the right conversations. This is a slide that really just sort of describes this, the potential value. I'll be very honest and say that it's actually talking about the value principally talking about the value to the operators, but it also is value to the whole industry ecosystems, which I think is also really important and critical to cover. One of the important points is, okay, how far do we reach out? We pat ourselves on our backs and talk about how we've achieved connectivity to, or the capability to enable this connectivity and work with two-thirds of mobile connections worldwide. 66%. You think that's good. But if you look at a map, that's what it looks like. The green and the blue are the same. So the yellow, the amber-colored ones are sort of coming on board. But the real problem, as you can see, there is a lot of grey on that map, and that's what we want to turn those grey bits into blue or green bits. And in particular, if you look around this part of the world, around the Caribbean, there is no blue. There is no blue. So I'll come to that towards the end as well. We know where the quickest opportunities arise in this space are API heat maps. So we know that the security and fraud related issues are really hot at the moment, which is why I talked about them earlier. And if you look on these charts, the sort of number verification, SIM swap are really well populated in terms of adoption. Some of the other types of APIs not quite so yet, but if we just help on the fraud and such like work, that in itself is really powerful. We have two ways of in the work that we've been doing. We have two ways of sort of engaging the operators themselves, building out their own platforms, their own capabilities, and exposing them, and then going to channel partners and actually letting the channel partners help do some of that work. And there are two big behemoths at the moment in that channel partner space that are dominating the work we're doing. One is Aduna, and that's a joint partnership between a dozen of the big operators worldwide and Ericsson. And there's in Asia, there's also the Bridge Alliance. And then there's lots of other partners that we work with that have either specialist or very strong regional interaction. So that's a sort of what it looks like. And we also are helping out with some of the sort of certification and verification activities to help drive that adoption and reduce the complexity. So our team sort of are doing that at the moment as well. And we are working with some very big specialist areas to drive some of the enterprise market demands. We are seeing, in particular, the need in social media for age verification. So we're actually working with social media companies, not just TikTok. FICO are a financial institution that are very strong on the anti-fraud side, so we're working with them. And as you can see, there are others in that list as well. But oh, there's a slide missing. Ah, there we go. Right. To me, this is the most important slide. And it's the one I've been listening over the last couple of days, and I've inserted it at the end because it wasn't in our pre-canned presentation on Open Gateway. So how does the Caribbean proceed with this? Particularly looking at the message that's been talked about in this session, or in this meeting around connectivity to global competitiveness, and also conversations I've been having with the CANTO people, particularly the data sovereignty piece of work, which I thought was really commendable. So before this meeting, we'd have said go to an aggregator, go to an info BIP or to Aduna or whatever, and work on that basis. But I actually think that you guys need to be thinking about what you need for the region. You want to do something that scales into your region and with your region, because if you go to Aduna, if you go to a really big player in a global sense, that may not be tuned to working with the companies in your region as well. So you need to think about that problem and how that works. You also need to think about where the innovation needs to happen inside the Caribbean. What is it that you want these sorts of services to be able to provide? Ensure that the operator and demand side are aligned on all of that, and I think an aggregator is essential, because the role of the aggregator is to sit and combine all of the requests and farm them out to the appropriate place and return them back where they need to go. I think in most cases, most of your operators will want to engage like that rather than run it all themselves. But what does an aggregator that's fit for the Caribbean market look like? And we're quite happy to have conversations with you about helping to do that, but we don't have the answers. They're your questions, not ours. And you need to be part of the solution, not us. We'll help you with the solution, but we certainly don't want to impose anything at all in that space. And that's my brief presentation. I hope I've given back some time to the agenda. I've taken the chair by surprise. Where is he? Anyone got any questions? No one's asked any questions yet so far. So anyone in the room got any questions? The work that we do is we're paying for it. It's GSMA funded. And our funding comes from either membership fees of GSMA or from the events that we run, so Barcelona. Back to you. Yeah.
All right. Well, of course, I want to give and again thank Ian for sharing with us, and welcome back. You said, what, 44 years ago? 44, you must say? Way. All right. Well, we leave it there. I know he made mention of the drive, but for the trainees here, we'll keep that between us, yes? We'll keep that in-house. Folks, it's time for that, well, much needed, I would say, and sort after coffee break, we'll take a little chance to shake our legs, move a little bit, and we come back in a few. Of course, the coffee break today is sponsored by TAT, the Telecommunication Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. Oh gosh, we had a time last night. Well, to be quite honest, I still catching myself, from last evening. Oh gosh. Again, I feel I pulled something, All right, so let's take in the coffee break, and we come back with some more in a couple of minutes. See you soon. Thank you so much for putting in place that coffee break. Yes, the good folks there at Tartan Barataria. Of course, just to give you a quick note as to what's happening when we're finished with all the business at hand, we gather again for another networking event. Networking event. Go figure, right? That's happening this evening, and it is compliments our friends at TSTT. And if it's anywhere close to what happened last evening, well, I can tell you it's going to be a fantastic time. So that's going to happen at the Jade and Ruby Rooms. That's, of course, on your way to the western end of the Hyatt Regency. So that is happening later on from around 5:30. Food, drinks, vibes, performances, the full works as we celebrate. So that's happening. I'll give details again regarding that later on. Again, just a quick reminder concerning the Wi-Fi. You're looking for a Hyatt meeting, and you're going to put your access code 856218. Again, that's 856218 for the Wi-Fi. So again, we want to invite everyone to get back to their respective seats so we can get into another important conversation. While we treat with that, let me again remind everyone that once you go onto the app, you can get access to all your photos during this our CANTO Connect AGM 2026. It's really easy. You're going to put your selfie inside there, enter your email address, and the AI will work it out in such a way that all the photos you're featured in will come up in your feed, and you can keep that for all time to capture your memories from this, our CANTO Connect 42nd AGM, Port of Spain, Trinidad. So we get ready for another discussion. This time, it's a panel discussion dealing with investing in the Caribbean's digital economy. And we want to give a warm, very warm welcome to the Vice Chair of CANTO. Your moderator for this session, Charles Douglas, will join us front and center, and he will take you through all who will join him on the panel. Let's give a warm, warm welcome to our Vice Chair.
Thank you. All right. Good morning. I'm going to invite my fellow panelists to now join me on the stage. Good morning. Good morning again, team. So please, we welcome you to this panel discussion entitled Investing in the Caribbean's Digital Economy. Now, what is the digital economy? Well, in a sentence, it really is economic activity enabled by digital technologies, connectivity, data, platforms, applications, and services. Why should we be talking about it? Why does it matter? Well, it certainly is a driver of GDP growth within economies, productivity, and competitiveness. It serves to bolster our resilience, inclusion, and innovation, and it has cross-sector impact. Tourism, finance sector, health sector, education, telecoms, finance, you name it. Now, with me on the platform are some of our experts, and I'd love to introduce them now and then ask them to very briefly provide a sense of what they do in their roles so that you get a sense of their background and why it is that they are ably suited to speak to this topic. So, to my extreme left is Mrs. Simone Martin Solgon, Vice President and General Manager of Flow Trinidad and Tobago, and Vice President within Liberty Latin America and General Manager of Flow Trinidad and Tobago. Next is Mr. Siku Alain, CEO of Global Trinidad and Tobago, and then Mr. Miles Merker, CEO of Curacao Investment and Export Promotion Agency, CINEX. So welcome, lady, welcome, gentlemen. I'm starting with you, Simone. Just give a brief synopsis so that we understand your background.
So basically, I'll be representing wearing two hats. The first hat will talk about local execution, so running the Trinidad business operation here for Liberty Caribbean. And then the second hat would be as a member of the executive leadership team for the entire of Liberty Caribbean. So we're talking about that regional outlook and perspective and then bringing it down into local execution. And as a privately owned company, you know, what better perspective in terms of providing, well, look, we invest quite a hefty penny into the infrastructure and into the development of our respective markets. So I think, you know, getting that point across, especially how do we drive it, how do we play, we talk about public-private partnerships, we had great conversations yesterday, and just hoping that this panel is an extension of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sekou Allen, CEO Global Trinidad and Tobago, which in fact is an amalgamation of Invest Trinidad and Tobago, Export Trinidad and Tobago, and Creative Trinidad and Tobago, which are previously the Investment Promotion Agency, the Export Facilitation Agency, and the Creative Development Agencies for Trinidad and Tobago, both in film, fashion, and music. I was previously the president of Invest Trinidad and Tobago, so spent a lot of time working with investors looking at the Caribbean at various investment promotion agencies. My second hat that I'm wearing today is as a director of the Caribbean Association of Investment Promotion Agencies, which Global Trinidad and Tobago remains on that board. And again, the Caribbean Association of Investment Promotion Agencies understands that foreign investors look at the Caribbean as an investable region first before they start looking at locations like Trinidad and Tobago and Curacao. And so the association ensures that we work with its 24 representative members on capacity building, joint investment promotions, regulations, and partnering with governments to ensure that the Caribbean remains a very investable region.
Excellent. And Miles?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. Miles Mercera, part of CINEX. CINEX is Curaçao's export and also investment promotion agency, similar to our friends from Trinidad as well, where we also have the different divisions from the creative industry, but also general investment for all economic industries on behalf of the government and also the export facilitation. Today as well with a different opportunity with the second hand on as the team member as well, part of the DHA, which is Digital Hub Americas, also part of a platform we have created on the island of Curaçao to propose and promote the region as a hub for digital investment for the future. But in general, I think we do similar into the jobs that we do. And one of our key roles is to, on behalf of the government of Curaçao, strengthen and develop when we define economic diversification, and every nation can decide what it means for them. But for us, it means less reliance on tourism and more independency on the others.
Fantastic. So, audience, I'm sure you'll agree with me that we have the right people. Now, to help sort of create a mental path for our discussion, I'd just like to share how we will proceed. We'd like to segment the conversation in 4 segments. First, we look at vision and what's the reality now. Then we will look for segment 2 on sort of investment readiness and policy. What does that look like? Then we'll look at, for 3, infrastructure and collaboration. And we will close with looking at capital, talent, and global positioning. So if that helps to kind of give you a roadmap of how our conversation is expected to flow. Of course, we're flexible, and who's to say exactly how it will go. Now, having said that, let's take some time to just concentrate on what our vision is for the Caribbean, just suppose our current reality. And the idea would be to see where we're headed and then how we solve. So the first question, big picture question that I'll ask all of you, but I will start with our business folks in terms of bringing the whole investments together. Miles, maybe start with you. What do you think, when you think of the next 5 to 10 years, what does a thriving digital economy look like for the Caribbean? Just suppose how close you think we are to that.
So from a personal perspective, but also from an agency perspective, I would say for the next 5 to 10 years, if we would really want to discuss digital, it would not be discussed as an isolated economy. It would be across everything that we do. Digital economy, I think, goes much more further than only tech or development of software. It goes into actual doing business, and digital and being digital is the new gold. It's a new era. So when we think about it from that perspective, we need to check about how do we manage across the Caribbean region together. So from my perspective, I would see the future as exactly what we discussed many years in tourism. We are one region, but in practice we are not one, because we cannot live and work wherever we want in the Caribbean region, yet we can, as Caribbean nationals, go to maybe France to work and live, or Amsterdam to go to, but going in between our own islands is very difficult, and that also comes with transferring of capital and funds and ideas and talent. It also boils down to me for the next 5 to 10 years would be how can we make it easier for us to move our talent and digital footprint across the region. And then at the end of the day, it would also mean more efficiency, more accessibility, because even though we're thinking that we can own the world and become, let's say, this fierce movement in the region towards the world, what we also know is one of the biggest, let's say, struggles that we have as a region is the adoption, the rate of adoption for this new way of thinking, but also exactly the technology that we would need. So one of the barriers for our success is just the rate of adoption in the region. It has to do with education. It has to do with our mindset as a region where we invest. And even though that maybe from a commercial company perspective, yes, we do see businesses and investment being made with cables, etc., but the populations are not being invested in when we talk about education on a regional perspective. So there are many things that, from my perspective, then we would want to see being triggered, transformed for the future, as I think people and the talent of people would be instrumental if we would want to be the benefiter of it in the region, or as usual, what we have done in the past, we were only consuming it. And if we want to stop from being the consumer of it, but actually being the productive power of it for the future, we would need to think differently on how we raise the next generation to understand what digital economy is.
On a scale of 1 to 10, where are we now?
I would say it depends per island, but if we look at it from a region perspective, I think we're at 4.
Regional perspective.
4.
4. No, I should say this before I start. If you hear a response that you want to align behind, feel free. We don't have to, I won't think you don't know the answer, right? So, Simon, would you like to opine on this?
Sure. So, I mean, I think Miles touched on some really strong points. For me, at the end of the day, the digital economy is really using digital as the core to drive productivity, encourage inclusivity, and at the end of it, it's a product that you export, right? Where are we? I think each island is running their own race, which is why I guess Miles is like, well, as a region, some islands are further advanced than others. And a lot of that has to, it's driven by the government's involvement. How much of their time is mandated around getting that end-to-end connectivity? Do public services work? I think we heard from iGov yesterday some really important points, right? It's all about that trust and capacity, right? Building a digital economy for its citizens, that public good. The other piece for us, if I look at it, we have the infrastructure ready, right? We have the access. It's now moving from access to impact. And that's where the conversations are now going towards policy, going towards inclusion, going towards digital literacy. But underneath all of that, it's the trust. Does the public trust moving more away from analog to digital, right? Do they trust that if I do that transaction online, it's going to register? Is it going to, the experience going to be easy? So I think there are a lot of, we talked about it, siloed conversations that are happening, but we can't really move from 4 to 6 and then hopefully 8 unless we start having a lot of roundtable discussions where each vertical is represented and then we kind of co-create the next step to take the region forward.
Well said. I heard you say 4.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Miles on,
Yeah.
if it's a weighted average, let's put it
No,
that way.
I clearly appreciate that. Well said.
So I think it's a great question when you talk about vision, and my perspective will always be from the investor perspective. And the question I would ask in my mind, and I would ask the audience to ask themselves is, if a global digital economy investor, whether from an infrastructure perspective or software development perspective or AI, is thinking of an investable region on the planet, are they thinking about the Caribbean first? And I would say from my own experience that when you think Caribbean, you are not necessarily starting with digital economy in terms of investable sectors. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because there are very investable sectors in the Caribbean, in the tourism and the agribusiness and the renewable energy spaces, particularly renewable energy, which is a very hot topic right now in the Caribbean. And so my vision would be that when a foreign investor is looking at regions for whether it's software development, AI, digital economy, e-commerce platforms, infrastructure, that the Caribbean is one of the first locations or destinations that comes to their mind. And I would agree that we're somewhere around a 3, 4 in that investor thinking. I think it makes it easier then if that is happening for organizations like the Caribbean Association of IPAs to receive more site selector requests and more investor interactions or investor engagements around digital economy type investments, as opposed to, as you're saying, Simone, having to spend a lot of marketing dollars individually as islands going out looking for that investor and having a really difficult sell because it's not necessarily the first thing investors think when they think about the Caribbean. So I think we have some work to do from an infrastructure perspective, from a labor talent perspective, from a labor movement perspective, and from even only our own adoption of technology in the Caribbean, so that it is viewed in that way moving forward.
Thank you. And by way of your response, you kind of transitioned us to the next segment, which we will want to focus a little bit on investor readiness and touch on policy a little bit. So what I heard you say, hope the audience aligns with me, you really pointed out some aspects of why the Caribbean has challenges to be investor ready the unattractive aspects. Talk about movement of people and so on and so on. What's attractive about the Caribbean? I'm going to make you start that word now. So we talked, kind of hinted at the limitations, rightly so, because we have to, be realist. But what's going for us? What are some of those attractive elements that we could share with the wider world that, yeah, we're ready?
Well, I think generally from a nearshoring perspective, the Caribbean is in very close proximity to the largest market for digital services. And so many of the Caribbean and Latin American locations are already providing those services across a value proposition anywhere from BPO all the way up to software development. So I think that location, as well as the English-speaking talent pool and the technical skill in the Caribbean, as well as being one of the things that doesn't work for us is that we're disparate in terms of across various islands and territories, but that also gives us a very diverse talent pool. And as Simone, you would have said, some territories ahead of others, they can provide particular services that others may not be able to provide. However, we do have key partners in the region that provide the type of infrastructure like a Flow in a pan-Caribbean fashion, and there are several others as well that continue to invest and demonstrate that there is a strong platform for investing in the Caribbean. So the infrastructure is there in terms of fiber to the home, the infrastructure in terms of undersea cables back into the North American markets. The talent pool is there. There is some training and capacity building to move into the higher value services as well. So I think we're starting from a platform where once we start improving our positioning as an investable region, that we have a strong basis from which to work.
Great. Simone, do you want to come on the back of it?
Seku's touched on some really good points as well. We don't need to be the biggest, right? We just need to be the most predictable, the most trusted, and the most connected. And I think geographically we're well positioned to be, I guess, the center of investment. We're uniquely poised just in front of Latin America from a time zone perspective, right? 5-6 hours from London, an hour, or in the same time zone as the United States of America. We have a lot going for us. The English speaking is huge. Nearshoring is also quite important. But it's just about us finding our unique talents in that diversity itself and leveraging that. Some islands will be further advanced and better positioned than others, and that's where we now, in that united fashion, start marketing ourselves appropriately, and we will see that the foreign direct investment will come almost organically.
Very well. So lots of positives too, right? Lots of positives. Some constraints, but lots of opportunities. Now, Miles, I'm going to ask you a different question, given where you sit, a little bit more on the policy piece. So how can governments and investment promotion agencies, such as yours, right, better align policy incentives and regulation to support digital sector growth?
I think, so the word policy, already automatically you think about its bureaucracy. It means slowing down. It means people need to get to work to try to identify or manage something. One of the things that if we compare the region, what we're very successful in is tourism. I've had the pleasure to for 20 years, be part of the tourism industry, now moved to a different industry. But during those times, I remember the conversations from investment was when what we did wrong in the region is we're trying to copy-paste the same model on each island, and then we're starting competing with each other on the same island. So we talk about being a region, but then we say, hey, this cool hotel is here, and we build the same hotel on island A, and island B, and island C. So it means that we're not adding value, we're only creating competition amongst ourselves. So if we look at from perspective from a tourism industry, what went wrong throughout the past historic years, similar to the digital economy era, policy needs to be developed to support the entire region and not create isolation or create barriers where others feel maybe they're on the front runner. Maybe when we talk, hey, you're good in this, and then you're going to build exact the same data center there. That's not really helping the region to support it. So from my perspective, I would want to see the barriers of policies being removed. I think one of the things that countries who move fast is that they let things move and then they build policy after. We try to create policy, to create a barrier because we think, we believe, and we know how it should be, but that's always creating a barrier for rapid adoption, rapid investment, or the creation of a synergy that is not typically there, because digital economy is also a moving economy. It is an economy that you build today, like an infrastructural thing, and you see a big tower. Most of the time, you don't actually see the actual physical economy of it. And if I put it maybe from an IPA perspective, people tell me, yeah, but what do you do? Because if you bring in millions of dollars, from the region, we only think of it from a policy, from buildings coming up, thousands of jobs being created, and cement and concrete being built. Digital economy talks about a whole different billion-dollar industry via your laptop or via one cable that you're being introduced to underwater, but things that people do not actually see or it's visible. So that also comes down into how do you measure it, and how do you measure then the success of policy being implemented or the success of a investment being done. So from different angles, at the end of the day, I think the conclusion would be not to create more barriers. And I think oftentimes, whenever we start thinking about policy, we're oftentimes already running behind. We're now talking about AI, but we know it's quantum next. We know everything's coming up. But if we start preparing now, we're still reading a manual while the race car is moving. So that's, I think, a balance that we need to find whenever we come up with the topic when we talk about policy or things that we would need to create to be able to create substance.
A lot of regulators are in the room, a lot of policymakers are in the room. I think what you said was very insightful, and I think you'll get support on that. Miles, I saw you nodding away. You want to add anything to that? It was pretty comprehensive, but would you like to add? Or?
Well, I just think investors in the digital space are looking for strong infrastructure, and they're looking for talent. And I think if the Caribbean as a region, the regulators can streamline both of those things so that there's easy access to infrastructure so projects can happen, and then easy access to talent. So the ability for talent to move pan-Caribbean such to support a particular investment, I think is going to be very important to achieve the vision that we talked about earlier. Obviously, each individual jurisdiction is going to work from a regulatory perspective, maybe setting up its own incentives to add that icing to the cake. But without the infrastructure and the talent, the investments can't happen. So I look at those two areas as an area where regulators must work together to present the region as, again, an investable region that can then find its way into the individual jurisdictions per what the requirements are in those areas.
Very well. Simone, anything?
No, I mean,
I have another question for you.
Again, I keep referencing the iGov panel yesterday because it was so incredibly insightful. You know, they mentioned FRED, right? Policy, regulation, infrastructure, delivery. Nothing can happen if those four things aren't in alignment. And as Miles said, sometimes we're building the policy proactively, no, not proactively, like retroactively. We're reacting to it. It's a bit too late. The other, consideration we have is this digital space is evolving at such a rapid rate. By the time we have the policy on the table, it's already outdated. Yeah, so it's a case of how do we keep that productive tension going where the policies make sure that, yes, we are protected, but at the same time, they do not stifle the innovation and the development and the attractiveness that we're trying to register on a global stage.
As I listen to you, the question popped up in my mind. As far as policy goes, do you see a policy around cybersecurity and protecting the network and the infrastructure superseding? That's probably a more relevant thing to kind of look at. So as a Caribbean region, we have a posture and we support each other vis-a-vis trying to say, who should connect to this or who, mandating different things. What are your thoughts on that? Because if the answer is no, it's fine. I just listened to something I heard yesterday and I wondered if, because then, you build a digital economy and if it's easily attacked or easily brought down, you don't get that trust that you speak about, right?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that? Maybe just one response. I don't know who wants to.
Yeah, I mean, data protection and data security is going to be important in any digital economy type investment. So I think the extent to which, and again, different jurisdictions may be at different levels, but the extent to which the region itself can be perceived to be a safe place for data flows and data protection is absolutely important.
Yeah, so we need to, that needs to be top of mind, right?
It has to be tough, but it also has to be collaborative. You cannot prescribe to an operator what their cybersecurity policy needs to be, right? We all need to put our, thoughts together and then co-create one that can be used across the Caribbean instead of it's developed in Trinidad and then Barbados has its own policy. Again, we're going to be fragmented and nobody wins when we take that approach.
Fantastic. We've touched on it because we had to, infrastructure, so I don't know how much time we want to spend on that. But I heard you say, Miles, that we have the infrastructure. I heard, or it was, yeah, it was Sekou, right? I heard you say you think we have the infrastructure, we have the subsea, we have the fiber. Is there anything more we want to say on that?
I would add that yes, we have the infrastructure, but when it comes to the, let's say, the structure to be able to communicate and do business. But one of the things that I see that especially when investors look at the region and the infrastructural things that are not in place is capital flow, just money flow, payment solutions. And it's not then communication because yes, we can send an email to each other, but actually how do we move money around in the Caribbean, and which is a big challenge, especially when we talk old currency policy, but also digital assets policy. So yes, we talk about digital economy being our strength in the future, but there's no digital asset availability, accessibility in the region where people really thrive and being used as a payment solution. So think of how can we navigate in the region and have our own digital or Caribbean digital currency and being less dependent on the Western powers or other powers where money fluctuates. We talk about having a Caribbean guilder for decades already. So that will not happen maybe in our lifetime, but it talks about the similar aspects. Okay, how do we move money around within the region and be less dependent on the giants of what we see globally, and now because there's a shift in power, then our money goes down, or there's a shift there, we can't do business there anymore. We should be an independent region that can do business with the world, and without the world being deciding factor for the region on how we move money around. And that's, I think, one of the biggest struggles for investors to communicate on the money and capital flow in the region. And similar to talent, which also is the same drama.
I would say redundancy is very important to investors looking at this region across multiple jurisdictions, and that is an infrastructure redundancy in any particular location, as well as a geographic redundancy. And so we are a region has high climate impacts in terms of climate change and high disruptions, and investors now, particularly with COVID and some of the other things happening in the world, are planning and risk mitigation strategies around disruptions. And so geographic redundancy means, and for Trinidad and Tobago, we are not selling us versus another Caribbean island, we're selling us plus. And so if there's a particular disruption in one place, there's somewhere else that you can serve your clients from. And again, with Pan-Caribbean type infrastructure companies like Flow are close partners to make sure that that happens. So that's from a geographic redundancy perspective. And I think in each individual jurisdiction, one has to work with the regulators, like ATAT in Trinidad and Tobago, and the major service providers to ensure that there is as much redundancy as possible per each location, so that a disruption does not necessarily mean you have to move business to another jurisdiction, but if it does, it means you also have that position. So again, I'm going to continue to come back to the Caribbean Association of Investment Promotion Agencies and the role in partnership with CANTO, with the MOU that we've now put in place, to promote that redundancy and that infrastructure and that pan-Caribbean approach that does not suggest that you necessarily go to one jurisdiction, you go to 3 or 4 to achieve the redundancy required, both geographically and from an infrastructure standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tackle that on several fronts, and Sekou raises some really important points about spreading your risk. That's basically what it comes down to, right? But on the infrastructure piece, as an operator and from an investment perspective, you're looking to answer 2 things. 1, can I operate predictably? And 2, can I scale? The predictability piece for us, it's nuanced because most of our islands do sit in a hurricane belt. We need to be able to quickly shift, being able to operate from one island that's impacted to another. Case in point, look at Melissa, Hurricane Melissa. Your redundancy point is also spot on. Right, in a matter of hours, we were able to shift from terrestrial network connectivity to satellite connectivity because the ability to communicate at that point was literally the difference between life and death. We have to find a way where the conversations make sense. The industry is evolving at such a rapid rate. The ROI on the infrastructure and the investments that we're putting in now, as Trinidadians would say, the maths really is not maths in. We need to figure out how do I get it across the line for people to see, okay, it may not make sense near term, but short term, this is an investment that's going to pay off. And it's those types of conversations. And I don't think we have the right perspectives or the insights from regulatory agencies, from government agencies to say, this is our plan, next 10, 15 years, will you be our partner? We promise that as you build those utility corridors and build that infrastructure with us, there's light at the end of the tunnel and there is promise for the spend that you've been able to invest.
No, very well said. And just to support that, because we need so much, but we already have so much. A lot of the conversation around subsea is that a lot of people are unaware, like, just how effective Liberty Networks has been. I mean, the Caribbean is one of the most connected regions with redundant routes. I mean, there's over 30,000 kilometers of subsea. There is like 20% utilization of the existing infrastructure. It's not by anywhere near end of life. There are many, over 66 cable landing stations, and we could go on and on. There's a lot of infrastructure, a lot of diverse routes, right? So I take the point that international investors looking at the Caribbean, if they look at that network and talk about fintech, cross-border finance transactions, the redundancy, the performance, I mean, that's there, but there are other bits to it that also needs to complement that. So, fantastic. Maybe just a quick thought on maybe what public-private sort of regional collaboration could look like between private sector and government. Maybe I'll put you gentlemen on the spot for that, starting with Q.
Well, I think PPPs are going to be very important to build out or to close any infrastructure gaps. Now, you mentioned that there is capacity in the major infrastructure, but there are some gaps probably on a jurisdictional level that regulators with their IPAs need to come together and build capacity in identifying what those gaps are, identifying what the investable projects are, and then promoting those investable projects and leveraging an association like Kuiper to promote those projects. So I think understanding the gaps on an individual country basis, then understanding the regional gaps, obviously working with the private sector infrastructure providers in the region is going to be very important, and then partnering with government that can see the public aspect of a PPP either through land provision or some other type of passive investment in order to make those projects happen and promote them as packaged investable opportunities in infrastructure that then catalyze investment in downstream digital economy plays.
Well said. Miles, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you see a scenario where you would encourage a government to say, look, build your own infrastructure, build your own subsea cable, build your own national network?
No, I think it should be, again, the collaboration is key, and the entire mindset of build your own or this is mine and this is for my structure is very outdated. I think in the world where we talk about globalization, when we talk about partnerships around the world, we would need to think from that perspective for the region as well. I do see a lot of opportunity where we need to identify each other's roles again and to understand who's who in the room. And just to give you an example, one of the limitations and struggles I think we have as a region is preparation of talent and education. And when we talk about education, private sector, oftentimes they move faster. If the government is not able to comply and prepare the next generation and wave of education and investment in, if we call it very basically, laptops in school, that means a public-private partnership should reproduce that exact thought. So how can we make sure that even the benefits from investing and investors taking place from a private sector perspective comes with the government facilitating the framework, but actually partnering up on tangible areas where it is in benefit from both from both perspectives and different hats on. So no, I would say no to that answer that one needs to be the owner. I think at the end of the day, if we let go of ownership and more of collaboration, it will stimulate. We all bring in something to the world and we leave very, very soon. So that means that whenever you're leaving, make sure you build something that's for everyone, for the legacies, for the future, and not based on a personal interest that who owns something, because I think that's something that, especially the new generation, we don't feel and have any tie to that.
Much appreciated. I won't ask you that question, Simon. I think you answered well. Very, very, very reasonable. So it takes us to our final segment, yeah? Of which aspects we've touched on, but we still have the opportunity to amplify. We'll focus now on capital, talent, and positioning. And I will start with you, Simone, capital versus talent. So the question is, which is the bigger constraint today for digital businesses in the Caribbean? Access to capital or access to talent? Or you think they're both? You decide.
They're both constraints, right? Let's not kid ourselves. They are both constraints. However, if I had to choose, the access to talent is much more important. You can always lobby for and convince for capital and investment. But if the talent simply does not exist, then you're even set back a lot further than without the infrastructure. Now, it's all about, we do have the opportunity for a lot of homegrown talent. Now, there is curiosity, you have innovation labs, it all comes from your education programs, what you put out there, introducing it from the STEM classes as early as primary school. All of those things help cultivate a workforce that is curious, builds innovation. But for me, brain drain is real, and it came up on a panel yesterday. Yeah, Miles said, the digital, you can't see it, you can't feel it, you can't touch it. How do you convince someone to stay in a region where they don't see it, right? Case in point, if I travel and I land here, I'm still on a paper form. That's not a digital economy. That's not a step into the future. I'm going to be excited by a country where I step in, facial recognition, and I'm out the door. Yeah, so it's all about how do we start convincing the people that we do have, the talent that we do have. How do we bring input? Maybe we bring the smartest minds from India, the smartest mind from Europe to now help elevate our talent pool, to get them to now also be competing with, the smartest and brightest at a global level.
Thank you. So you both are in sort of investment promotion agencies par excellence. When you talk to investors or they talk to us, or you try to lobby investors to interest them, did they bring up talent as a issue? Speak to it. Which of you would like to? Maybe Sekou, you could.
Talent is at the top of the list when you're talking digital economy. Infrastructure and talent, and access to talent at a particular skill level. And so when you're talking on in a particular jurisdiction, the ability to scale is always difficult, right? You can throw 1,000 Indian engineers at a problem very easily. In one town of a city in India, you can't necessarily do it so easily in the Caribbean unless you have the process in place to access and identify that talent in a pan-Caribbean way and put them into one investment vehicle. And so that's where we really have to look at a region of whether it's talent movement, but now we're in 2026, talent doesn't necessarily have to move, right? There's all types of ways of working that we're using to attract foreign persons to come and work here, but we're not really using it around in the Caribbean as an investable project. So capital will flow to where there are investable projects, and there is capital flowing into the region. The question is, does it have access to the talent and the infrastructure it requires to deliver?
I would add to that, I think I agree with both perspectives. I think if we want to be very visible and tangible of what it actually means, within the digital economy space, one of the things that we see, for example, in the Caribbean region, we talk about e-gaming licenses. Yes, we give out licenses with people working out of India or in Canada, not in the region. And the license on itself is maybe a value of $10, but the actual production of people working and going to work and buying a house, that's what you would want to see in the region as well. So yes, talent remains a big struggle. What we see is oftentimes in the region, we develop the region, if you look at the old school financing or offshore financial industry is the same. We provide the service, and then still the talent, the skill is around the world. So, which is a way of looking at it, but how can you make sure that skill is also produced and created for the people living in the region as well? And that goes back to education, that goes back to opportunity, and I think what we would need to respect, especially when we talk about the way we work, is policy needs to follow the natural habitat of how people work. If we take one example, during the COVID times, we discussed about the region not being ready to work from home. How do you develop policy based on the natural habitat of how people work? And oftentimes we develop a framework to position a person that this is what you would need to do without understanding the raw talent of how the natural behavior of a person is. And the person is a talent, and that's oftentimes we think it's a machine, but we're all human beings. So at the end of the day, we will need to make sure that the human beings' natural habitat follows, and that the policy follows that, and also follows, I think, the way we develop the incentives for attracting talent in the region.
I appreciate that, and it's complex. I mean, and I think why here we're saying, because we do have talent here, excellent talent, running companies. Inga spoke to it about, Jamaican talent, running Liberty markets, and so on. But it clearly is that the rate at which we develop talent needs to increase, and too many youth are being marginalized. If you take Jamaica as an example, remittances, I think, is second to tourism. And so the fact that we export talent and they send back money home is major to supporting the economy, but at the same time, we need the talent here to grow the economy, which means that we need greater participation from our people, our human capital. Some are brilliant, but too many perhaps are being left behind.
But how do we do that, right? What's that clarion call that we say, hey guys, come back home, let's help build it? How do we market ourselves for our talent to want to stay? Because it's very attractive to go abroad, right? And I think once we figure out how we reframe, look, there's so much opportunity and potential in the Caribbean. You really don't need to go indefinitely. You can go, you can learn, educate yourself, and then come back home.
Yeah.
I think that should be a program that almost every government should figure out, how do I bring the talent back home to help develop?
And just to add to that, I think, especially from a new generation perspective, if we think less in borders, less in isolation, there's no discussion of people leaving. Yes, I think we would want to see Caribbean nationals living even in China or even in Amsterdam, whatever it is, but they can still work for the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And now, because we're moving abroad, we can't work for our region because we can't even get a payment system to be able to be paid if I'm abroad. Or if I live abroad, I cannot build a pension because I'm not back home. So the similar that we would do, we create, for example, again, to tourism industry, an infrastructure that is accessible for everybody around the world to visit us and experience us, but we don't create an infrastructure where the Caribbean region can work and live anywhere around the world and still have the benefits of being a Caribbean native. So I think if we challenge that flow, then our diaspora can be used. And if we look at Curacao now, going to the World Cup is thanks to our diaspora. People from Curacao living abroad, doing it well, but still choosing in sports to run and then, let's say, play for our island, and they actually did it. So I think if we allow the talent to actually be part of the solution, it will happen, and we should not think it from a isolation standpoint that people, because they're abroad, they cannot be part of the system anymore.
That's a great
Well
point.
said.
Listen, the World Cup thing still hurts. but congratulations. But
Congratulations.
Too soon, too
We're
soon.
very happy. Really.
Yeah. Congrats. All right, perfect, yeah. So, great. We'll close sort of on global positioning, and I think we've touched on it, right? Wouldn't you agree that our general conversation has been speaking to how we, as a Caribbean region, we need to position ourselves globally? And so, do we need to expand on that, or do you think we've covered it? I think we've covered it. Miles, you have one comment you want to make on it?
No, I mean, capital will flow to investable projects, and I think the talent, the infrastructure, the regulators' roles, the governments need to package these products, these investment projects in a particular way. to then promote the region as a whole. And CAIPA looks forward to working with CANTO through the MOU to do so. And of course, Global Trinidad and Tobago will continue to promote Trinidad and Tobago as a robust, redundant, investable destination. I had to get that in.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Look, I am delighted that we can open the floor now. I mean, I trust that you have questions, perhaps. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, but we have time, and it's my pleasure to invite persons from the audience to either just make a point yourself, if you would like, or ask a question of the panelists. No, not too long, not a speech, but do we have mics in the audience that we could support? Somebody could bring a microphone, please.
Thank you. I've heard talk about policy, governments developing policies to support digital economies. I have not heard a lot on those policies translating into a cohesive set of necessary legislation that underpins digital economies. And I can assure you, having researched the matter in considerable detail, there's a lot of work to do in that area across the Caribbean. Some islands are a little more advanced than others, but some jurisdictions are way behind. How do you suggest that governments operate and develop a set of core pieces of legislation across the region on a seamless basis that supports digital economies?
I'm going to invite our IPAs to take that on, because you're at the mecca of government in terms of the whole the ecosystem.
I think one of the opportunities that we see, and especially as well, I think we was discussed in the last webinar series of CAIPA as well, how can we, because what we're seeing is each island in the region is developing some type of policy, either it's AI or it's cybersecurity or it's data, whatever it is, but we're all doing it individually and we're paying lawyers individually. So, and most of the time you can copy paste the same law for each island, and of course maybe it's one is French, one is Dutch, whatever it is, but it's applicable. So what I would want to see and challenge, I think, governments would be to have some sort of coalition team for the entire region where we identify the 10 best laws that we would need to have across the region, pay it once, develop it one big agency for all the islands, and then curate it for each island, and then pass it all on the same day via parliament, like the national thing. Of course, maybe I dream too big, but I think that's the way we would need to look at it because now we're struggling to develop one policy on AI, and one is talking still about data, but maybe we're already advanced in data. So things that we would need to do from a region perspective, I think hopefully, if we really want to be one region, we need to have some laws that are developed for the entire region at once and implemented on all islands at the same time.
So let me ask a question on that. So perhaps we have that vehicle already, right? Do you see the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, which is as that agency to drive it, and it's that we just need to lobby them more, to push them more? I don't know. I asked the question. Miles, I see you nodding.
Absolutely. So I agree 100%. Investors looking at the region see a patchwork of various regulations and laws. And I think we understand in each jurisdiction and Pan-Caribbean what the low-hanging fruit are, what the obvious gaps are. And so if we all go about it differently, then we continue with the fragmented approach. So yes, the regional bodies involved in telecommunications and telecommunications legislation need to be involved, and the regional private sector players need to be involved, and regulators need to listen and work together, identify the 2 or 3 key pieces that need to be addressed in a very short space of time, see the successes coming out of those, so so governments are now motivated to continue along that regional cohesive path. So, but to your question, the role for the regional body is going to be extraordinarily important, and then of course the private sector piece.
I mean, but we're very active. I mean, if we were to even to look at what Lisa was able to achieve with C9 and the over-the-top operators and getting it to CARICOM, I mean, it's bold steps like that. We just use that as the vehicle to keep driving that change in, you know, Caribbean organizations such as CARICOM, such as the CTU. We have the vehicles available. I just don't think we're using them efficiently and effectively enough.
Fantastic. Any other question? I think we have time for one at the back.
And the one there's two.
We'll take both. We do have 5 minutes, I think, so we could take both. So don't be too long in your question.
Thank you. Hi, morning. Owen Williams, Head of Software at iGovTT. iGovTT is the national ICT company of Trinidad and Tobago, but I'm just standing as a developer talking amongst a bunch of other developers and other persons involved in technology. Because of the resource constraint I was mentioned a while ago around talent, I've had the opportunity to build and be part of many hackathons over the last 20 years or so. I think the first one I really drove was something called Teleos Code Jam. And Teleos Code Jams, the first one in 2008 was started because there's a conference across in Radisson I think put on by CTU. And they wanted a component that brought in young people. So they partnered with Teleos. I was working there at the time to sponsor this particular event. And it was put on to great success. It was a lot of fun. I was much younger then and had a lot of fun showing off on a bunch of engineers who came back 2 years later to show off on me, because that initiative went on for 10 years. And I can tell you from a Teleos perspective, when I was there, it was a significant source of actual local talent. I think from a private sector, and I'll talk to public sector in a brief second, private sector perspective, we need more of those things, where private sector companies put on these kinds of innovation events and pull young people into their scope, as opposed to kind of waiting for you to graduate or waiting for you to knock on your door via an HR process. We saw a bunch of great talented individuals that went on to do amazing stuff that I still see now 20 years later. In terms of what we saw even from the government level, we've had government hackathons and initiatives that have also brought in amazingly talented individuals. So this is not a private or public sector thing, and I think from a Caribbean level, we need to actually ask, how do we make it easy for talent to know what needs to get done, and therefore allow for the flow of that talent throughout the region? It's much easier than trying to attract talent from India or from other places, from wherever they come from. And it's not, I really like what was said, that it's not a zero-sum thing. Either you're working in the Caribbean or you're working in North America or Canada. It could actually be working all over. You as a developer today, most developers know this. You sit in your own home and you work for anyone across the planet. And all we want to do is grab a piece of that pie from a developer perspective and get them to solve our local problems. So we've proven the model. It has worked time and time again. We're looking forward to more of it. I'm always in these conversations. I'm looking forward to my next hackathon. Actually, I did one this weekend, but that's not relevant. The point is, we have evidence that these things work, and I'd like to see us pushing towards that and making this a reality for our solutions in the region.
Well said.
Thank you for that fine intervention. And just to ensure that we don't go over time, I would like to...
There was one more question there.
Was there one more question?
On the left.
All right, let's try for that, the very last one.
Yes. Thank you very much. It's not a question, but I just want to agree with Mr. Miles Mercier, sorry, if I got it right.
And you know, he pleaded for you, right? So that works.
Yeah. On the point of policy first, because all throughout the meeting, we heard a lot about Caribbean collaboration. I'm saying if we are to realize that collaboration in any meaningful level, at any global competitiveness, the policy, I think that is fundamental and should be in place, because otherwise, if there is no policy, how would we be globally competitive, or even within the region be competitive to draw any investors? So I agree with you totally, and I support your call on policy first. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. So with that, I want to close. This morning's conversation really confirms that the Caribbean's digital opportunity is real, but that success depends on coordination, clarity, and confidence. We know investment flows follow ecosystems that are credible and connected, and so now the challenge is execution. Thank you to our panelists. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and thank you so much for the audience. Thank you.
Our winners of the Innovation Challenge can't promise it will solve Monday morning blues, but it might just fix how we get through them. So let me just tell you quickly about the CANTO Innovation Challenge, and I promise you I'll be very brief. Put simply, it is a regional stage for our Caribbean youth to design and pitch ICT and digital solutions that tackle real problems, from digital inclusion, smarter education, or achieving some aspect of efficacy and efficiency. And here's why it matters. We want to turn bright ideas into real-world impact. And it's not just slides and strategy, but tangible solutions. It connects our young innovators with mentors, funding, and media exposure. It builds regional collaboration and the next generation of tech leaders. And I want you to reflect on that panel that we just had that spoke about the importance of ensuring that we have the right talent, the right people, and the right seats on the right bus. So today, I am proud to announce that CANTO, in close collaboration with the Liberty Caribbean Foundation, is pleased to present a prize to the winners of the CANTO Innovation Award. They have won a trip for two to Trinidad and Tobago to attend CANTO Connect, and they have had the opportunity to network, learn, and have a few doubles in between sessions. Most importantly, they will be receiving a cash prize of $2,000 US, which is seed money with serious potential for their business. And again, today, it's not about prize giving. It's about planting the seeds for our Caribbean tech ecosystem that keeps our talent home. There's no place like home, and we're proud. So, I'd like to ask you all, when I invite our innovators up, when you see them for the rest of today and even tomorrow, take the opportunity to support them. Give them mentorship. Give them your ideas. Give them the stage, the opportunity, and watch them turn Caribbean problems into sources of Caribbean pride. It is our responsibility to make the digital ecosystem stronger with innovation, clarity, and most importantly, sending the elevator back down. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Team 7.5.
Thank you. Thank you. For hundreds of thousands of Jamaicans, public transport is the only option. However, long, uncertain waits in the sweltering heat have become the norm. This unreliability in public transport, not only present in Jamaica, can mean missing an exam, missing a day's pay, or waiting at the bus stop at night in unsafe conditions. Thus, the urgent need for a solution presents itself. Good morning, everyone. My name is Damaria Walker,
And I'm Joseph Udodo.
and we are Team 7.5, the creators of
Where's My
My
Bus?
Bus? Where's My Bus is a mobile application that provides real-time, easily accessible updates about the buses en route that the passengers choose. This important information about their routes is at their fingertips and can be checked anywhere to aid in planning and decision-making about their commute. Our app allows users to see where the bus is in real time and get driver updates on road conditions, bus capacity, and driver location. The main impacts of Where's My Bus is as follows. It increases reliability as persons are now able to get to and from where they need to go in a reliable manner. It also increases safety as now persons are not at the bus stop waiting on a bus that they don't know when it will arrive, which reduces the probability of any unlawful activities and increases safety for women and children. It is also effective, as Where's My Bus incentivizes passengers to use the more cost-effective and environmentally friendly bus system. It is also efficient, as Where's My Bus increases passenger productivity, as passengers are able to make decisions with their daily plans. This would also increase productivity for example, office workers and students, as now it would increase their likelihood for getting to work on time with no issues. It is also sustainable and is also scalable, as it can be implemented in other Caribbean countries, for instance, Trinidad, where we are now. It also allows for improved public transportation systems and urban planning on a whole.
So the approach we took to creating our prototype was by implementing a dual client system to manage the passengers and drivers as separate sides of our app. The passenger has a live map screen on which he can see all of the routes that he subscribed to, as well as whatever buses are on those routes and their stops, as well as the live locations of those buses. The passenger can also see updates from all the buses that he subscribed to by the drivers to gain information about what's going on with the buses. And the driver side of things, the driver has a small selection of quick announcements that he's able to send to passengers subscribe to the route. And currently for this prototype, the bus's location is tracked through the driver's phone. However, we would like to move away from that in the future by implementing some embedded system into the bus with an automatic GPS tracker and a small screen for the driver to send his updates. The prototype was built using the cross-platform mobile app creation tool called Flutter, which dealt with our user interface and handling our backend events. We use Google's backend as a service platform called Firebase to handle our user management and our data, and we use the Google Maps API to show the live map, show markers representing the user and driver's locations, and show the bus stops as well as the routes on the map. Now, for a quick walkthrough of our prototype, this is the passenger side of things. On the left side, we see the passenger homepage. The favorite routes show the subscribe routes that the passenger has, and the passenger can see messages from these routes. On the right side, we see a demonstration of our live map. So we've drawn some routes to show how that would look on the passenger side. This is there's also a small bus menu that the passenger can access to filter and organize the buses that he's seeing, and that is that for the live map. This is the driver side of things. So the driver has routes that he's assigned. On the left side shows that, and he can pick one of those to go live on. Once he goes live, the right side shows what he would see, and he has his small announcements that he can send to keep the passengers updated, and he can end the location as well. Now, to demonstrate the live messaging, on the left side we will show the passenger side of things, on the right side will show the driver. So the driver sends some messages, and because the passenger is subscribed to that route, they show up on his side, and the passenger is able to keep in touch and keep up to date with the situation and the road conditions and
just the arrival times and whatever the bus driver would like to send. And finally, we have a demonstration of the live tracking feature. So this is the passenger side of things. So just now, we've set 2 buses live in this demonstration, the 47 bus and the 75. And we'll see this on the map. So we'll move to the 75 and we'll move to the 47 shortly when we zoom out. And this is just a demonstration of showing the bus moving in real time. And 47 is also further back on that map. So on to our business validation.
Of course, with having an application like this, we have to know who would be our user base and how many persons can we expect to use the app. So based on our research, by approximately 2030, there will be over 22 million persons in the Caribbean who will be using public transportation. And of course, with our application, we had to look for user reviews. So in our initial prototype, we had some persons try the app, see what they liked, and we got a mix of mostly positive, but also some constructive criticism. So our positive reviews include that they love the live map features, and of course, they are able to track where they are, where the bus is in relation to them, and it increases their planning ability. And some of the constructive feedback that we've gotten is that they would rather the bus driver not be able to send the messages because some bus drivers are a little bit unreliable, so they're not going to send everything in real time. So to fix that, we're hoping in future implementations to actually have a hardware device in the bus so that they're able to track the bus driver. And other feedback that we've gotten is if we do still have the bus driver with the buttons, we could have a driving mode so that they're not distracted while driving and to increase the safety of the application.
Now, for some of our future plans, as Demaria stated before, we'd like to have that hardware device embedded into the bus to keep things away from the driver. And to that end, we'd need to integrate with the JUTC to have these devices installed. They would be, in theory, similar to the smart card readers that are currently in place, where it's just a small device and a small screen that the driver is able to use and send messages, and it would have an automatic GPS module that would handle tracking the bus and keeping the location on and off when the bus is done its route. Additionally, we'd like to improve our accessibility with text-to-speech and voice alerts for safety. It wouldn't be ideal for the passengers to constantly have their phones out in public for safety concerns. So those voice alerts would be something that we'd like to work on. Additionally, we'd love to improve our architecture and our servers to handle the large load that would be the hundreds of thousands of users daily and the hundreds of buses that would be streaming location at the same time. And finally, we'd love to expand our services to the wider Caribbean.
In addition to this, we have our revenue generation. So we're planning to initially have the app be free so that we can generate our user base and have an idea of who is actually using the application. But these proposed pricing tiers are actually similar to airline pricing tiers where we have economy, business, and first class. So economy would be persons with the core features of our application, which include the live tracking and the bus driver messages. And then business class would have some features that we hope to implement in the future, which is automatic estimated time of arrival, which would be based on the historic data from bus arrival times and departure times. So we'd have an algorithm to calculate what that estimated time would be, and that would be a paid feature. And an ad-free application would also be something that we would have as a premium feature, because initially we hope to have advertisements as our revenue base, because that's the easiest thing to implement, and it wouldn't take away from the actual application. And then the last tier is first class, which would have some additional features such as route planning, mobile push notifications, and offline usage. We are the developers of Where's My Bus, the real solution to making your daily commute a predictable, reliable, and safe reality. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Distinguished delegates, industry leaders, partners, and fellow innovators. It is truly an honor to be here at CANTO Connect 2026, a space where we explore the future of connectivity, innovation, and digital transformation in the Caribbean. Today, I want to invite you to a conversation that sits at the intersection of technology, culture, and youth development, and why that intersection matters more now than ever before. Allow me to introduce you to Crazy About the Caribbean, a cultural edutech brand initiative born out of a very simple but urgent question. What happens to a child's sense of identity when the digital world they grow up in does not reflect who they are? Caribbean children today are more connected than any generation before them. They are the true digital natives. They swipe before they write. They scroll before they read. Screens are not an addition to their lives. They are embedded in how they learn, communicate, and play. But while access to technology has increased, representation has not kept pace. The shows they watch, the characters they admire, the stories they repeat over and over, much of that content is created far beyond our shores. And while global media absolutely has its value, the imbalance is clear. There is still not enough high quality, culturally relevant, educational content designed specifically for Caribbean children. When a child rarely hears their accent in media, sees their food represented, or recognizes their environment on screen, it sends a subtle but powerful message. Your story is secondary. We must ask ourselves, especially in rooms like this, where is Caribbean culture in the digital spaces where our children are growing up? Caribbean culture is not static. It is alive. It lives in our food, in our language, in our humor, in our music, our resistance, and our resilience. It is passed down in kitchens, in schoolyards, in storytelling, in rhythm, and in community. But in a digital age, culture cannot survive on simply memory alone. If culture does not evolve alongside technology, it doesn't disappear overnight. It fades quietly. One story not told, one tradition not shared, one accent softened, one generation at a time. And this is where intentional digital design becomes critical. Crazy About the Caribbean was created to explore how technology can be used not to replace culture, but to preserve it, to amplify it, and to carry it forward. It is about using innovation to connect children to their heritage, communities to their stories, and the region to its future. Let me ask you to imagine something. A child opens a book, they scan a page with their phone or tablet, and suddenly their culture comes alive. Through animation, through video, through music, through interactive digital experiences. They see faces that look like them. They hear voices that sound like home. They recognize landscapes, languages, food, and traditions. This is the experience we are creating. At the heart of this initiative is the Crazy About the Caribbean Scantivity book. It is the Caribbean's first online interactive activity book made specifically for Caribbean children. It is a hybrid learning experience that blends print, technology, and heritage. This book includes over 101 vibrant and engaging activities, from puzzles to quizzes, recipes, trivia, coloring pages, word games, and creative challenges, all rooted in Caribbean culture, history, sporting heroes, music, and everyday life. The physical book grounds the learning experience, but the digital layer is where the magic happens. When a child scans selected pages, they unlock exclusive digital content, videos, animation, even 360-degree virtual tours of Caribbean heritage sites, and interactive learning experiences. This content is made specifically for this book, not repurposed, not generic, and most importantly, all the embedded media follows a kids teaching kids approach. Young Caribbean voices lead the learning. Children see their peers explaining traditions, sharing stories, and guiding activities. They don't just read about culture, they see themselves reflected in it. And that builds confidence, pride, and connection. This project has been in development for over 3 years and is deeply collaborative. We've worked with young Caribbean filmmaker, Akel Charles, to bring the visuals to life. Educator and consultant, Tafa Chia Lewis Benjamin, to ensure the information represented in this book is sound, relevant, and inclusive. We've closely worked with cultural practitioners, consultants, and critically, young performers. This is technology acting as a catalyst for culture, not a competitor to it. It proves that digital innovation does not have to erase identity. It can strengthen it. This Scantivity book is also curriculum aligned and supports core primary level subjects including social studies, language arts, mathematics, creative arts. This means it works in classrooms, in homes, and in informal learning spaces. Teachers can use it as a teaching tool, parents can use it as a bonding tool, and children experience learning as joyful, not forced. Beyond individual learning, this initiative builds regional connection. A child in one island can explore landmarks in another, learn games from neighboring territories, hear their Caribbean vernacular celebrated, not corrected. This is regional identity, nurtured early. There's also a vital economic dimension in this initiative. By collaborating with Caribbean creatives, videographers, animators, illustrators, educators, we are creating revenue-earning opportunities within the Caribbean creative economy. We are showing young people that their culture has value, their creativity has value, their stories have value. Technology becomes not just a learning tool, but a pathway into creative industries. This model is intentionally scalable. It is designed to grow across the Caribbean and into the diaspora, so that wherever Caribbean children are in the world, their culture can travel with them too. Because Caribbean culture does not belong on the sidelines of education. It belongs in our apps, in our platforms, in interactive learning, and in the future. As we discuss connectivity and innovation, we must ask, who is digital transformation really for? If children grow up surrounded by technology that does not reflect who they are, then technology will never fully serve them. When culture and technology move together, we create confident learners, proud digital citizens, innovative thinkers grounded in identity. My name is Rachel Henry, creator of Crazy About the Caribbean, and I believe Caribbean culture is not a side project. It is critical digital infrastructure. As this initiative continues to grow, meaningful collaboration will be essential. Those working in education, tech, youth development, content creation, and digital innovation will find natural points of alignment within this work. Crazy About the Caribbean, this Scantivity book, is now available in local bookstores and on Amazon. I warmly invite you to connect with me after this session or throughout any of our digital platforms to continue this conversation. Together, we can ensure that Caribbean children never have to choose between being modern and being Caribbean. They can be both. Thank you.
Colleagues, partners, friends, what an extraordinary few days it has been here at CANTO Connect 2026. From the very first steps of our sunrise walk at the Queen's Park Savannah, as Port of Spain steered to get up in the morning, to the present, we can say that CANTO 2026 has truly delivered what we anticipated. Connection, conversation, and momentum. We shared a deep immersion into the carnival culture of Trinidad and Tobago, from tasting iconic street food, from doubles on the corner to late night limes, and we really enjoyed the unmistakable energy of sweet tea and tea. And so we want to extend our sincere thanks to our co-host and networking sponsors who ensured that us as attendees experienced an authentic, full-bodied Trinidad and Tobago experience, complete with rhythm, energy, and performances from some of the biggest soca stars on the island. Over these past few days, we have exchanged ideas that matter, we've challenged assumptions, and leaned into the future of our industry together. We saw innovation on display just now, right? And how impressive it was, collaboration in action, and we see a region ready to adapt, to improve, and ultimately to lead. On behalf of the CANTO board, I want to now extend our heartfelt thanks to our sponsors and partners by name. We thank TST, B-Mobile, Liberty Caribbean, One Communications, Brava, Huawei, Centrix Latam, Alive, Digicel, 6D Technologies, Telesur Limited, Cerillion, and to our regulators, the Turks and Caicos Commission, and to the Telecommunications Regulatory Commissions, TAT, we thank ICANN, Airlink Communications, Amplia, Interop, Clearfield, Cloud Carib, Corning, Saxtel International, GSMA, and Vox. What an awesome array of sponsors and partners. Wouldn't you agree? We thank them so much. Your confidence in CANTO and your investment in this community made this event possible. And you didn't just support an agenda, you helped shape an experience that will resonate with us long after we leave. And to our exhibitors, same. TSTT Mobile, Liberty, Honor, and Power, we didn't mention them before. Honor, Power, and Telecom, Unified Networking Development Systems, among others that we previously thanked. The exhibition floor was engaging. It showcased, meaningful innovation and spurred conversation. We really want to thank our exhibitors who have turned ideas into tangible solutions and strengthened the value of this conference for every delegate in attendance. And to the CANTO Secretariat, well, quite simply, this conference does not happen without the CANTO Secretariat. From months of planning to the final details, from your early mornings to late nights, you delivered excellent every step of the way. Please, let us all join in showing them appreciation that they so richly deserve. And most importantly, to you, our attendees, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for showing up, for engaging fully, for asking questions, for sharing your perspectives, and leaning into conversations that will shape our industry. Your participation is what gives CANTO Connect its energy, its relevance, and its purpose. As we close CANTO Connect 2026, we're already looking ahead. I'm delighted to announce that CANTO Connect 2027 will take place in Panama from July 31st through February 2nd, 2027. And we cannot wait to welcome you there for another unforgettable gathering of our regional and global community. Before then, the journey will continue. CANTO Connect 2026 and our conference will be hosted in the Dominican Republic. I'm pleased to share the dates, that the dates are confirmed. They're August 9th through August 12th, 2026. And registration is now officially open. We encourage you to secure your place early and join us as we build momentum on what we've created here. So as you leave, take your conversations with you, take the partnerships, take the inspiration, and most importantly, buttress that shared commitment to continue building a stronger and more connected Caribbean digital future. Thank you for being part of CANTO 26. Safe travels. May you continue to have success. And we look forward to seeing you again very, very soon. Thank you all.
Sincere thanks to you, Vice Chair, Mr. Douglas. I'm happy to announce that lunch is being served. Enjoy, let's eat up, and continue the great conversations. And of course, see you all not only for the afternoon session, but for the cool down compliments TSTT later on this evening from 5:30 at the Jade and Ruby rooms. Again, all the best.